Hey everyone, it's Kenlyn and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do a short video on the wheel of the year. Like, what is an equinox? What's a solstice? How are they different? Is it astrological? I know some people have asked or wanted to know, and so I thought I would just include this as a part of my channel. And let's use the work of Erin Bruce, who did a beautiful infographic that I found on Etsy to support us. I'm going to tee this up in a screen share. This is the wheel of the year. It's an earth-based understanding of the cycles of life from the harvest and how the sun interacts with earth to produce plants for our livelihood. So if you think about the early peoples, they lived close and connected to the land. So there were celebrations and honorings of the cycles of the sun and the earth. And it has to do with the interplay of light and dark. I love that. So if this were my wheel of the year, I would put the winter solstice on the bottom and the summer solstice on the top, because the summer is opening to the light and the sun, and the winter is down in the fertile depths. And since it's a wheel, you can turn it any way. But because we have a title on it and it's an 8.5 by 11, then now we have a top and a bottom. But a wheel is a wheel. There is no top and bottom of a wheel. So let's start by imagining before all this content came on this page. Let's strip it away and just imagine a circle that gets intersected horizontally with a line. Now the circle is the feminine and the line is the masculine. Let's think of it that way too. And that line represents the equinox. So on the left in this graphic, or however it shows up on your screen, we are looking at the autumnal equinox. The dates are September 22nd, or 21, 22, 23. It even has 24 in here. Depending on the year, that's the time of the autumnal equinox, that it is 0 degrees Libra. It's a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are initiations. So at the 4 crosses of the year, the solstices and the equinox, you're going to find cardinal signs. But how do we know that it's 0 degrees? Because there's a perfection in the universe, and the light and the dark are equal at this moment in time that we can know, science can know, and the ancients could know. They could figure out through observation that there was a moment of perfect, equal light and dark. And that became known as the equinox. Equa meaning equal, equality. Now, the spring equinox happens when we enter 0 degrees Aries. 0 degrees Aries is the spring in the Northern Hemisphere, and Aries is a cardinal sign, an initiatory sign. So we have fixed signs, cardinal signs, and mutable signs. These quarter crosses are cardinal signs, and that's what makes up the equinox. So at the day of this recording, we just had our autumnal equinox in the Northern Hemisphere. And so we are going into shorter days, longer nights. Whereas my good friends in Australia and New Zealand are experiencing moment by moment more light, more daylight. And they're having spring and we'll go into summer. So that's why oftentimes I just refer to it as the equinox or the solstice without putting a season on it, because my audience comes from both hemispheres. Let's now continue the journey of light from that equinox point. Let's imagine a vertical line, and that vertical line represents the solstices. So those are the apex of darkness and the apex of light. So just as there was equality, now we are the opposite. We are the most darkness or most night in the winter solstice, and that is December 21 or 22, and initiated with 0 degrees of Capricorn. And there's a mathematical time. That's why the time is not set, because every year it's slightly different. So there's a mathematical time when we know that the light and the dark are equal, and that the light is at its apex or the dark is at its apex. And then in the summer solstice, once again, we moved from Gemini into Cancer, and 0 degrees Cancer is the summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere. So let's go into like what they mean, and then we'll do the intersections of these quarters. But we have a cross, a circle with a vertical axis and a horizontal axis. And then let's go into the times of the year, what they represent. So we've just in the Northern Hemisphere gone through the autumnal equinox. We're in that slice of pie where we are harvesting, dying, and giving thanks. And so we would have celebrations of harvest, and we would be composting. We would be like allowing the things that we harvest to return to the earth. This period of time takes us to Samhain on October 31st, which is the time, the middle point time between the equinox and the solstice. It's the halfway point. And that's the time in Samhain that we remember our ancestors and honor the dead. It's the time of descent. It's the time where we go inward in the Northern Hemisphere. So now we've got this like X through each of the quadrants. There's 8 important times of the wheel of the year. Those are basically like pagan holidays, but pagan more meaning earth-based, cyclical, paying attention to the relationship between sun and earth and our embodiment. We get to the apex of that dark, and we are at the winter solstice, the shortest day and the longest night of the year. That signifies winter. So we came out of autumn, and that is the tipping point for winter and the winter journey. They say the return of the light. Why do they say that? Because the darkness has hit its fullness at that December point. And now, day by day, the light is coming back. So it's the return of the light. That brings hope, renewal, birth. But we're still in that fallow time where we're composting. All right. And then we hit that next quarter. And it's interesting because we call it Groundhog's Day in the modern world. But it's in bulk, and the February 1st time, your spirit begins to stretch and reawaken after the winter's rest. So we're coming into spring. We are not quite into spring, but remember that's where the Groundhog Day thing comes in. Does the groundhog see its shadow? And if it sees its shadow, then I don't remember. I think that means spring is coming faster. But spring comes when spring comes, and it always comes according to these seasons and cycles. Unless you're tropical. And if you're tropical, you don't experience these, because in the tropics, you're close to the equator. So you don't experience the light and the dark moving like you do in the other regions of the world. Isn't this all fascinating? I'm really not the one to be giving these lessons, but I really want to do this for our community. So bear with me. If there's anything, you can correct it in the comments. Oh, and I love that the winter time and that Samhain to the Imbolc time is dreaming and resting. And then new beginnings, new life stirring, trials and initiation. So you're coming out of your cave, rebirth and planting. And then we hit the spring equinox, which is that March, it says 19, 20, 21, depends on the year. And that is initiated by the 0 degrees Aries. That's the beginning of the astrological year. And that is balance, rebirth, and growth. The days begin growing longer than the night. And so then we get to that quarter cross time in May 1st, and that's Beltane, or otherwise known as May Day, modern celebrations. And you can feel the energy has shifted because in the Northern Hemisphere, we're into spring now. We're into, oh my God, shedding the clothes, shedding the stagnation of winter and coming into our playfulness, our sexuality. You'll see that once Beltane hits, it's fertility, pleasure, joy, creativity, joyful time to celebrate the fertility inherent in all life. And so we've been moving to more and more and more light as we've been on that side of the wheel. And then when the sun moves into 0-degree Cancer, which is a cardinal sign, we then hit the summer solstice, June 20, 21, 22. And that's the longest day of the year, the shortest night. And right after that happens, it's that beginning phase of culmination, right? Because now we have already had that moment of the most light, and it's starting to get moment by moment darker. Abundance, culmination. It's still outward focused because we're still in summer. We're still very playful. I mean, where I live, it hasn't even gotten hot yet until we go to Lammas and the midpoint time between the solstice and the equinox. So all of those X's are midway between solstices and equinox. And then that August 1st time the sun is waning, life begins its gradual descent. This is the beginning to harvest, hopes and fears, resting after your hard work. So you can feel into when we worked the land, how it formed our relationship to the calendar and to the meaning that we gave to those times and cycles in life. And we say that these cycles are feminine because they're earth-based. They're the interplay of the sun that gives us nourishment and allows us to be here and our embodiment here. So I hope that supports. I hope you have a deeper understanding of solstices and the equinox and how it interplays with light and dark, and you can flip it if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you for joining.